Welcome in this new podcast episode. Today I'm talking to Veronica Hong. Welcome, Veronica.
I don't know. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and we met and started talking because of the IDG Global Practitioners Network. I think that's where it started, right?
Right.
It wasn't in Co, right?
It was officially at Cole.
Oh,
I
okay.
had this event last year.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. And Co, for you listeners, it's a small town in Switzerland, close to Montreux, which they have a very beautiful hotel palace where this event happened in June 2024, and it will happen again this year in July 2025. And you can already apply if you want to go. Anyway, so for sure, we are connected through the inner development goals. That's what this got sparked. And then we did in December together, we organized the early session and we had a conversation together about preparing this early event. And then I got interested in what you were doing. I go like, okay, let's have a conversation for the podcast too, so more people can learn about what you share. And as we just discussed, just before we officially hit record, why am I interested in this? Well, I think that the way that you live right now in a community, well, not actually right now, but at that time, was because I believe that the way that we live, especially in the Western world, but especially in the Netherlands right now, we use a lot of land space for living as a human or as an individual or as a family. And I see that a community living is a way of making better usage of land and living as a family into one house is also closing you down, right? You just become more on yourself and less involved with the community. It's very difficult to go to your neighbors, between air quotes, difficult, because it's not difficult. You can just walk over, but still, it feels like a huge bridge to go there. And when you are living in a community like you do and did, it's like a natural part of the way that you live. So we're going to talk all about that, but let's start at the beginning, so that people can understand where you're coming from and how what you do now is so different and where that's coming from. So people now have an idea where we're going to, but you come from Taiwan. You grew up in Taiwan, and also the conversation we had was a lot about cultures and how it different and how you feel different about cultures now.
Mm.
And one part where we just had the pre-conversation was that you mentioned, how important community living is and learning from various generations and other people. I think it's a huge part of the blue zones, right? The blue zones where people
Mm.
in general get older, more sanitarians are there. Um, in my point of view, in Taiwan and in the Far East, in China and all these countries over there, they have a lot more relationships between the family and living together and being close with the family. But you also gave me a different picture of what that also encompasses. Can you share, how you feel now about how it's organized in Taiwan?
Thank you. Thank you. It's interesting that you mentioned the blue zone because I always also just watched this not long ago and it inspired me of rethinking about my culture. So I'd say coming from Taiwan or in East Asia in general, as a adult generation, you have the responsibility to for your parents, the older generation, while you raise your kids. And usually, what happens is that when someone is married, they usually would take in their parents to live with them, either in the same place or someplace nearby. But they will be the provider, the caregiver for the elder generation. And of course, this responsibility often falls onto women. And well, it is a patriarchal society. So usually it's the woman, is for example me, my family. My brother, once he's married with his wife, will be supposedly the one that taking my parents to take care of them, and me, while I'm married to someone else, I will be taking care of the parents of my husband. And I felt like that creates, when it's mandatory, when the whole society expects you to do it, it creates a whole lot of pressure on not only women but also just the nuclear family. So you need to take care of your children while taking care of your parents at the same time. And I felt like also like seeking to flee away from that culture. It's not only the caregiving in the community, but also another sense of community is that we are a culture that is more about collectivism. And collectivism is not only about community support, but about how you conform. You need to be more like others. You need to behave in a way that keeps the harmony of the group. And growing up, I also felt a bit like suffocated or like muted, that I felt like I could not live my full personality. I cannot do things as I want because I always need to compromise for the group. And for without this pressure, it contributes to, well, main part of the reason why I want to go away. Because looking from outside, I felt like, oh yeah, in the West, in North America or in Europe, they're more individualistic, and I actually like that because everyone can keep their uniqueness, I would say, and you think more about yourself. And then there's another question about like, oh, whether I'm being selfish or not. So that's another topic to talk about. But being here, and when I was in the community, I actually have a conversation with the community members, because they were like, oh, looking from outside, like in the East, you guys respect more the community and the solidarity, while here is everyone's about me, 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 me. It's individualism, so it creates competitiveness and separation. And so I share the same thought that I just shared with everyone here about how I felt pressure about it. And I think now it is really bridging this East and West, different philosophy, different way of living. How do we reconciliate this to create community where everyone can live their individual self? And this is kind of like my project. Through my coaching and my community building, what I want to achieve is a world where people can live in harmony with each other while being their authentic, unique self. And yeah. I don't know if that answered the question. And
Well,
just
I think it opens a lot of doors to look into, right? So, or
mm,
windows. Because you mentioned that the oldest son is responsible to take care of the parents. Well, actually, then the wife of the oldest son is. I think when I look here to my personal situation, when our parents still lived, my wife was taking care of her parents. Well, actually, when her her father died, she took care of her mom. That's more the situation. Because when they were the two of them, they could manage themselves. And with the neighborhood, but they had lived in a small village, so family they came around. But once he was gone, it became a lot difficult. So my wife was there at least once a week, doing things like shopping together or just doing stuff together. The necessary things to make sure that she can live, but also just being there and having conversations. And in my situation, I also have a sister. She took more care of my parents, so she was there also 1 day a week. She spent time with my parents, even when they were together. And I'm not sure if I'm like the perfect example for the Netherlands, but I feel like it is. I see this more often, where the daughter feels more obligated, more that she needs to take care of the parents next to the
mm,
children as well. Also, I think a lot of women, once they get married, they still feel like they take care of the kids and they work less. So when they work less, they also more easily would take on the care of the parents because um, the husband or the son often just works full time. It's not an excuse. I think it's just the way that I see it a lot. It may differ in the city, but this is what I experience in like the towns where I live in my area. So I think that is an interesting difference that I see. And at the same time, I also notice what you see is exactly right. So once you start being very independent, it becomes also a very selfish thing, and it creates what you said competition. Sorry, it creates
Mm.
competition. That's interesting. This competition part when you don't live in a community. So you have been living in the community. You're now back in the apartment in Paris right now,
Mm.
but you have been living for like what was it 5 6 months in the
Yeah,
community?
about
Yeah,
6 months, yeah.
yeah. And you didn't feel competition in the community. Was it different the feeling?
Mm. Well, there's a lot of things more than competition and living living in a community. Um, I think I can start with saying that my worldview is that we're one and we're all connected. And I would say living in that community, what I was trying to do as an experiment for myself is to see how I could have compassion for everyone because I see everything in people in me, and I see myself in them as well. And why sometimes I'm being triggered, why sometimes I feel I'm being judged. If I'm being triggered, what is a trauma or things that or certain emotional experience that I haven't been able to process, bring to my awareness. And if I'm feeling judged, is it because I'm actually judging myself? Um, living in the community gives you a lot of opportunities because you can do as much self work as possible when you're alone and you feel like, oh, you're doing great. But once, not only in the community, once you become closer to someone, you start to build a relationship, you realize, oh, there are so many other things that are being brought out. um so I would say, to me, I think everyone would experience the challenge of living in community differently. To me, one of the most important thing that I was learning is about how I can just be myself and know that I'm worthy of love and I'm worthy of being here and I'm valued without doing much to please or doing much to prove that I'm worth it. Um, yeah. And I think in that community, um, we share everything. We share tasks, we share all the resources. So I think it's hard to see competition, I would say. Um, but like I said, everyone's will have be on a different journey,
Of
and everyone
course.
will feel differently.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But and I am wondering now because as I'm seeing you now in your apartment in Paris, do you feel different now?
Oh yeah. So definitely, and another challenge is that because our community, we are really like living mostly together. I was lucky to have my own room to sleep, and sometimes if I need to work because I have a lot of meetings and I need it. But most people will sleep in the dorm, and we always eat together. So almost all the activities you do it together. Is you're not obliged, but then you're kind of like taken in the flow as well. And that was hard for me because I felt like I don't have my own space. I don't have control over my own time where I eat, why I eat, for example. And that's about a lot of practice on letting go. And coming back actually to my place, uh, I felt very good. I felt very good to be back to my place. that I have things that I'm used to. I have my comfort, I would say. Um, but I do miss the part of living in the community, and I'll go back. I guess I'll just do it like maybe not full time, sometimes, or maybe I'll find a community where I can have my own space. What I love about it is I feel inspired. Uh, it's like you always have friends to talk to, and or you listen to conversation, and then it will give you idea, and it's also the energy. Earlier we talked about the guitar behind me, how I was playing a lot more guitar in the community because there are people always there touching the guitar, playing, practicing, and I feel inspired to do so. There is a whole collective energy in a sense there. Um, yeah, so I like to have both living in community and having my own space.
And you mentioned now about your comfort, right? You have the
Mm,
comfort here. So you could
mm,
say comfort zone, right?
yeah.
So how you spoke earlier about um, doing what you love and living from love and having not really plans, but seeing what's coming towards you. Just go with the flow, right? So, and I'm wondering, I'm not sure, but I'm just asking now, right? So when you are living in a comfort and going with the flow, compared to when you live in a community or live with your family in Taiwan, you have this obligation. It also builds a lot of a grid, right? It builds a lot of grid. It builds the feeling of pushing forward, of doing something in difficult situations, in difficult environments, right? If you are in this community, you have to deal with situations that come up in the community, and you have to find a way to handle those situations, and you, but also as a community. And when
Mm,
you're on your own and you live in your own comfort zone, it could be very comfortable, but you're not really pushing something. And I feel like if I would just live, and this probably has a lot to do with my upbringing, of course. When I would live with a comfort zone and just go with the flow all the time, I would not have to push sometimes and not just have to push through and become more learning, right? It has to do with learning,
mm,
right? So when you're in this tough situation, when you're in the community and people do something that you feel needs to be done differently and together, then you're learning how to cope with it as a person, as how you deal with that, but also how you can improve the situation, how you could build on the situation. So I'm wondering, because you went away from Taiwan from this situation where you feel like you couldn't be yourself, and now you have been living yourself for the last 10 years or so,
mm.
more than 10 years. How do you feel about that? That in a situation where you're kind of like pushed into or are in a combination with other people, that you'll learn more than when you're on your own and go with the flow. I'm trying to not be not to judge you, but it says more about me how I feel about this than it says about you. To be clear, to just be
No,
very
I didn't get the judgment. I didn't sense
okay.
the
Good.
judgment at all.
Okay. Good. 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 Thank you. Thank you.
But I felt like there's a lot of things that were being unpacked. So
Yeah.
could you tell me again what exactly,
Sorry.
yeah, the key question?
Yeah. Yeah. There is no key question, but it's a feeling that when you choose to go away from Taiwan and you live now in your apartment in Paris now after
Mm,
12 years living on your own or 14 years,
mm,
and um, and you mentioned comfort, right? You're here in your own space and you're on your own. You can decide when you want to cook and what you want to eat, and you
mm,
feel this feeling of comfort. And then the other side, when you have this living in this community or living with your family in the past, and you're like part of this whole where you need to adjust, you
mm,
need to make contributions, but you also need to step down a bit sometimes. You cannot completely be yourself sometimes. In what situation do you feel that you'll learn more as an individual, as a person?
Mm, in what situation do I learn more?
When you're in
Mm,
your own, in Paris, or when you're in a community?
ah, interesting. Okay, yeah. I think I learn in a very, very different way. Um, so I think both are good. So I think in Paris, I do have the time and space to go very deep into myself. But this is also ability I'm trying to cultivate. If I can do this in a community, that means, if I'm strong, like I'm focused on going inwards, then I can do it anywhere. But I'm not there yet, so which is why I need my bubble. And what I through the community, is that you always have blind spot because you only know what you know, right? And well, there are something that our bodies know that through some breath works or other somatic works that you can bring out the things that were not to your at your conscious level to your awareness. But being in the community, and you mentioned this about pushing yourself. I felt like I was pushing myself, kind of to just intensify this experience. Like, yeah, being a couple in a relationship, it does bring out it kind of pushed me as well to grow. And being in a community is like you're in relationships with a lot of people at one time. And that is where you really see a lot of the things that you couldn't see before. You got triggered more easily or more often, I would say. And so diverse way of living. And I would say what I'm trying to do here and as an experiment is to, I love this um, sense of community. How, what happens if I choose uh, willingly to be in a community myself and do that self work and to see how I can allow myself to authentically be myself? Because yes, of course, sometimes they are others people will, it's maybe they really explicitly have certain statement that makes you feel like, oh, there's a judgment. They make comments and that start making you feel doubt yourself. It's the same like in Taiwan. If I'm being a bit different, I might receive the kind of look or comments from people make me feel like, oh, it's not allowed. Uh, and I think what I'm trying to do is to have this audacity to just be myself without whether it's being validated externally by the society or people I'm close to or not, and know that by truly be myself, I would finally attract people who will allow me to do so. And I kind of felt like in this community I was in, the reason why I stayed in it for so long because it wasn't planned. At the beginning, it was just maybe 2, 3 weeks, and then I ended up staying for months because I feel most of the people I came across there uh, share this similar vision or value that it is about this oneness, this co-creation, this compassion about accepting others and accepting yourself and letting go of control as well. And this is where we talk about co-creation is really like the owner of this place, because it is a one-man ownership of this community. Well, there are many different community forms, but this one is like this. But he just opened up his place, and it's as if anyone can do. You see the marks of people passing by at the place. It's not like, oh, you cannot do this. Like it's even how we distribute the tasks is like he will ask, what do you feel like doing? Because the most important thing is that you feel motivated to do what you want to do. Nothing is obliged because when you feel like you have to do it, then it creates this like conflicts within yourself. You're doing something you don't want to do. And if I can go back to what you say about this female role of caretaker, one thing I learned about myself is that I actually enjoy being the caretaker, but I think rejecting it all my life because this is society telling you that you need to do this because you're the woman. And so I didn't want to do that. I was like doing the opposite all the time until like in this community, what I learned is that there is this flow in the community where everyone find their role, their uniqueness, their archetype, I would say. And it will change depending on the different members we have all the time. But I actually see start what why I enjoy start enjoying being a caregiver giver is that I see the value in it, the value that the society doesn't put much into because it's not something that you can prove something that you do, but it's just the way you hold space and how people come back into this place and then they feel relaxed and comfortable. Sometimes it's just a lighting that changes. Sometimes there's a bouquet of flower. Those simple things actually has an impact on our well-being without us really like, I would say the modern society, we don't put enough focus on this type of thing or sometimes maybe too much when it comes to excess of consumption. And it's also when you talk about comfort, I would like to come back to that because I think what prevents me from keep adapting to changes is because I start getting attached to my comfort zone, to my place. Um, and I think there's a fine balance between feeling comfortable, and it doesn't have to be attached to a place. Actually, it can be just yourself. If you feel comfortable within yourself, if you find home within yourself, you can be anywhere. You can adapt to anywhere. And sorry, I kind of lost my train of thoughts when we're talking about comfort. Um, well, maybe it's not important anymore. I'm forgetting that. But a last point I want to say is about the support. So I think being living in Europe for 10 years and well, practically on my own, uh, I felt very there's a lot of pressure on myself, and I always felt like, oh, I need to do this. I can figure it out myself. I'm doing it myself. Um, and that has created enormous pressure. And I wasn't feeling well actually. Just like I always felt like I don't have a support net that is there. My family is far away, and of course, with the complication with my family, I don't necessarily feel like I can share. I don't feel emotionally safe, I would say, to share everything about my life. And being in this community, again, I see how I don't need to figure everything out myself. Actually, just by sharing, talking about how I see things are difficult, like my problems, people come somehow just like, they come in with certain solution or they just shed light on a blind spot that I have and make me feel much lighter. Like the problem is not as big and dramatic as I see. It's okay. Um, and I was like working on a project on a few projects in this community as well. And I was the one who's like responsible, working on a computer all the time. And I felt like, oh my God, I have to do this all on myself. I was going into this corporate experience that I had before that you had to deliver something. Most of the time, it's not like it's easy that you can solicit team members or have a casual brainstorming. But that's what happened in community. I realized just like, oh, I felt stuck here, and I start talking to someone. I feel stuck, what I'm doing, da da da, and they're just like, oh, let's have a meeting. We'll talk all together, and then it just flows like that. I don't control the agenda. It kind of just like whatever comes out, it will have a meaning, and all that was discussed inspired me to to deliver my work without all this pressure that I'm self-stuck. I need to do everything myself. And so that's beautiful. I'm embracing this new way of operating. Yeah.
I can understand that finding this way of living is very tough when you live in a culture where it's like obligated to live in a certain way. Do you feel that you could at some point go back to Taiwan to your family to live there and be yourself without being influenced by how other people think?
I really would like to try that one day as an experiment. I was back in Taiwan in December thinking that let's see how I feel with this kind of like Veronica 2.0
Yeah.
um, to go back to Taiwan and see how I feel there. I don't think I was ready. I mean, I see a lot of possibilities out there. I start seeing, oh, there are people that are working on this, but within my family, I think there is still some difficulties that need to, yeah, that I'm not ready yet. Maybe my parents aren't ready yet, or maybe we just need to find a new way to shift this dynamic. Um, yeah, it is also about are we all allowing ourselves to reinvent ourselves instead of being attached to our past and the identity? Because if we hold on to that, we don't give place to changes to grow.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay, let's get back to the communities. If you have the community that you have been living in and you're looking for to build a network of various communities all around the world, um, and you talked about this issue, the relationship with your family, that they might not be ready for it. How does that work with the community in the global space, right?
Mm.
How are other people ready for these communities?
I think that's a great question. I think it is exactly about how the sense of community is not only about people that are related, connected to you, your closest like friend, family, that your blood connected with blood, and then your friends. Um, I think for everyone to be able to, I would say, heal or raise a level of community in this, or raise a sense of awareness in this community, it requires a certain level of diversity, or I would say the highest level of diversity as possible. When I say let's say, yeah, it's my mom actually. I find it's the toughest part in this family that is yeah, creating certain dynamic, and she has actually a lot of power now that I realize it. A lot of energy and presence in this family, very important. And our relationship has much improved a lot because she has got in touch with her own community in Buddhism. She found her tribe, actually. So this support that you from the community is not really like from the family. We will all find the community. Like I feel like I found my family in this intentional community I was living in. And I wouldn't even say that it's a family we choose because we don't actually choose the family that actually comes along, those who choose to stay, those who choose to to share a vision, share a certain value. I think that is the essence of the sense of community.
That is interesting. I was thinking also with my question about um, I think and it's similar to what you described from Taiwan in relation with your mother, but it's more than that. It's also the expectancies of the culture. So
Mm,
if you're in the Western world, um, there is some expectations how we live, how much we care for ourselves, how much money we earn, and how much we contribute to society by, for example, paying taxes.
mm,
And I have this odd example. I we had a New Year's meeting. It was last Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday before, with the people from our neighborhood here. So we have a meeting at some home, and we drank and we just talked, and we were talking about this project where we are building our new home. So we're going to build a new home this year, which is in a different place. And right now it's in development right now. So there are some properties are already being built, and there's like tiny houses. So there's a project of tiny houses. There's two different types of tiny houses there. There's one that have permanent. So they bought the ground. So they have a plot of land where they built the tiny house on, and there's a number of those, like I think like 10, that have like temporary access to the ground. Let's say 10 to 15 years. I'm not sure exactly it's a longer time, but it's not forever. So they pay like a certain amount of money per year for the ground, but that's about it. And as you may probably guess, but as you can understand, when you have like a temporary solution, you're not investing everything in how to have your house, to build your house, and you have like temporary solutions for some things because you may need to move in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. And so it is a more messy, right? So when you have these tiny houses, it's more messy. Everything is like put together with pieces. And I find that very interesting. I find that very interesting, and I'm very keen to learn and to see if I can communicate with these people to make connections, because it's very unnormal for our view in the Netherlands, how we look at how people should live. And then I had this conversation with one of the neighbors, and he said, "Oh, are you going to live there? Okay, so close to these tiny houses. Okay, I don't like that. There's just a lot of mess around the house. I don't like it. It shouldn't be like that. I don't like it." That's the only thing he could say. I shouldn't be like, I don't like it. The mess is just, it's a lot of mess. I don't like it. He's not even living there. He's not even close to he has a home very clean here, so it really doesn't involve him, but he has felt very you know protective for a clean and organized society. So these people don't belong in our society. That was his feeling.
Mm.
That's how I translated, of course. That's my translation. And I can understand how. So I'm not saying I can understand. I feel that, like, the way that rest of society looks at these communities is that they are so different of how they organize things and how they work, that they don't contribute a fair share or work in a way that they respect or that they expect, that they have something against that. Is that something that you experience? Is it something that, as like, I can understand that these people from these tiny houses experience like mental violence against them because they have this messy place, right? Do you feel, because I can understand these communities in general also have like a messy feeling around it.
Mm.
What do you experience when you live in this community compared to where you're now in France, of this organized or like disorganized life?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said earlier, I don't remember if it's a part we recorded or not, but I used to like a lot of planning control. I still like it, but I'm learning to let go of things. And so apart from this messiness, oh, and there is also this about being fair share of things. I like to touch on these 2 points. I think this messiness is interesting, like how each of us view orders and what makes us feel comfortable. Is it messy or is it ordered in a certain way? And we all have our own way. So when we all have our own way and that we put that together, it becomes a mess. And what is the harmony within this mess? And I think it's interesting if we take it from nature as organic. Well, it's really hard to find any really wild natures now. But nature's has its way of ordering. And do we see as mess? Yes, we do kind of like want to order even nature in a certain way so to make it look organized. But who are we to decide that it needs to look like this? What the benefit in it? What is it exactly, the benefit of order? And I think it's exactly about this knowing, this certainty, this control we want to have, and not allow things to just be themselves. And I think it's interesting, like, because this is a lot in what my philosophy of co-creation uh, is exactly not trying to control the flow. Let's say we have a brainstorming session that we want to co-create something, what like we have about the money talk. It's not about having an agenda and just let whatever comes out. There are still times I catch myself in a brainstorming meeting saying that, oh, what this person is saying is completely out of, it's not in the context. But I just let myself, hey, just wait and see what happens. And it really opens a lot of different possibilities because even if it's not in the context, it still inspires this person. If we see every person, they do things and say things for a reason. Everything is valid. You will know they are just speaking their truth. And how do you encompass that truth in how you understand the world? I think that is a lot. That is a key work to do also in if we want a world um, of where everyone embraces like oneness, togetherness, and we can finally live in peace because otherwise we're just defending our view. I think this is right. I want things to be this way, but you're not allowing other people to voice their truths. Um, yeah. And about the fair share as well. Um, my little experience from this community, when I start thinking that, oh, this person is not doing enough work, or when I start calculating, I start looking into why do I do this? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like everyone has to have a fair share? What exactly is a fair share? And I realize it's because I have this, or at least for me, I have this benchmark in my mind. Like I think it's a fair share because I think people should do this and I'm doing this, but I don't really want to do it. I'm doing it because I'm respecting a certain role that I created for myself. And I think that's when I feel like I'm calculating because I actually don't want to do it, so I don't want other people to do it either. It's in a way I can also see it like I don't actually want to put money into social contribution, so I see people who are getting social benefits as profiting from the system because I'm not. Well, I'm forced to do it. And when I find myself doing things that really like, I just feel like doing it. I want to do it for the community. I stop calculating. I stop paying attention whether other people are doing it or not. And that, no matter the result, whether things are done or not done, clean or not clean, I feel great. I felt, yeah, that's why I want to inspire everyone to just do what they feel like doing. Because when you intrinsic, how do you call it? Like, well, from
Intrinsically.
deep down, yeah, thank you. From deep down, you really want to do this if you're motivated without it being anything external. Uh, it is a great feeling. You're just doing what you do. Mm.
Yeah, I like that. I like that view. That's why I'm asking these questions and also giving my, um, cultural background to show you how I feel about this. And I want to learn. So that's my intention here. Um, I was also wondering because you talk about doing what you really want to do, and then you talk about entrepreneurship. So you are a coach now. You have your own company. Um, so you have a lot of freedom. Um, do you believe, do you feel that the way that you live now, in the way that as a community, we can all do our own part, give our own work to the community, that we could, and you have some experience in larger companies. that you could bring this feeling into companies that people, you know, bring to the company what they really can deliver and also develop themselves and have freedom. And at the same time, together, they have this organic kind of like organizational system. Do you feel that that is possible, or do you feel that the best way to do this is to work independently and have your own company?
So for me, like my vision of the sustainable world is a lot of intentional communities, separated small communities, but they are all connected as a big network. I would say that's how I see a future economy. I would say just everyone is their entrepreneur and entrepreneur like we know now we have collaborations and that creates kind of a team for a company for a project, but it's kind of agile. It's always based on project. I can be working with you and we have a company, and then I can be working with others having a own company. And so some question I still have is about, it's all in small scales, right? Or small scales, but like together as a big scale. How to have a world, as a community, and then also people working together, growing bigger in scales, such as we see corporation nowadays, but still maintain this organic, like co-creation. People do what they feel like doing. I think that is it's still tricky to see, which is still, as humanity, we haven't been able to achieve that. Otherwise, it wouldn't look like this nowadays. If that can happen, I would love to see that happen. I just can't. I don't know because how the system created a corporation, how it operates. Like I'm trying to get people out of the system working for a corporation because I realize we are all contributing to working by working. We might be contributing to something. Do we really understand how our company operates? What all the resources are going into? Are we contributing to a cause that we actually aren't aligned with, or something that is unethical that I suppose we're not, we shouldn't support? I hope everyone agrees. Um, and there's also a certain alienation when you are assigned a task and a position and you're expected to do this. And I think life is so much it's better to test different roles, do different things. And also what's important is not to see this hierarchy of things like junior, senior, or like expertise. How I think it has its value, definitely. Some people have more experience, but it doesn't mean I feel like our world is operating in a way that we are listening to experts, listening to people who have more experience. When while they are if they are open-minded to listen to people who has no idea what their expertise is about, and can have a comment and take that comment into consideration instead of suddenly judging or like saying that this is wrong. I think if we can all operate in that way, yeah. So I guess, sorry, go back to your question. I think we were able to achieve that if everyone work enough on themselves and
Hmm.
becoming more aware, and we reach a certain level of consciousness. Uh, and there where everyone can live more fulfillingly and in harmony as well. And then I'm really hoping like the goal of the company will change. It's about bringing more to more people instead of making more profits in the detriment of workers, like workers in the office or in the production site, all similar, but they're being exploited the same way, I would say. I didn't realize how like this burnout or depression I was having is really coming from misalignment of, I'm trying to I'm not being myself, but I'm actually directing my life, contributing to, I would say, a machine without really understanding what was going on behind. So yeah, I'll stop right here.
I I was just thinking about this part where you I think a lot of people are very scared of doing this inner work to find out what they really want. I think a lot of people find it's a lot easier just to confirm to the system and just do and watch some Netflix at night and then just go back to the job in the morning.
Mm, mm,
It is work. It is a hard work to work on yourself. And I honestly, I think that that's why I like the IDGs, right? The inner development goals to me is a way of developing yourself in a way, not as a selfish thing so that I become better, but in a way of how can I contribute? How can I make this world in a, a place where we can all live? And I mean, not humans, but everybody that lives here. I also believe what you just described about how we look at communities living together has been done a lot in the past already. So we have great examples from the past that we could use. There's this great book, History of Tomorrow, by Roman Krasniqi, and he gives a lot of examples of problems of today, how they were resolved in the past. Um, like for example, I didn't know this, but Cordoba was in Spain was a very huge city in the past. It's still huge, but it was like I think they had like 400,000 inhabitants compared to like 40,000 in Paris. So it's completely the other way around
wow.
today. But it was a lot larger than Paris. It is so of course the numbers of people difference, but it's completely the other way around right now. But what was interesting there was that all kinds of faith lived together and they accepted each other. Not always, but in general, it was a lot more safer to live together. And if you look at the other book, which is very interesting, is the book by what's his name? The Dawn of Everything. That's the English title of the book. It talks about how indigenous people traveled around, start living at some places where there was like a lot of food or resources available to live for a longer time. And once the resources were, deplenishing or were just, it was not the season, they moved on, right? Some people lived with the seasons. For example, they lived closer to the sea when it was like a summer and lived in the woods when it was like winter or the other way around. So they moved around and they kind of like worked in communities depending on where they traveled and how they went. They also had like fights and made slaves in those times. That's not also unique to what we do now.
Mm,
But you see that we have been living this way a lot in the past already. There's a huge community where not patriarchy, but where the women ruled for hundreds of years in the Middle East as well, for example. So there's a lot of examples in the past how things were done differently and had actually better results. If you count a longer life, not especially as the one and only result, but well-being as an important result, because you mentioned well-being earlier too. So I feel that living in a community and also remembering what you said before, people that want to stay that stay, right? So if how you feel if related to this community, and if you want to stay at the moment you feel that you stay, and other people will move on and you may move on at some point. It depends on the flow of people, will depend on how people feel and how they, you know, like you do, like how you live intentionally and go with the flow. So I think that's a really interesting way of, I have no question to be clear. I feel it's a really interesting way of looking at life and living your life in a very discovery kind of way,
mm,
discovering yourself, discovering communities, discovering the world, how we could make this work. So I like what you do. Um, I like that what you do has a lot to do with closeness to nature, so that it's not just about our well-being; it's also about the well-being of nature. Of course, when you say something is nature and you're placing yourself outside of nature, we are part of nature, so we are also nature, of course. which is a very difficult topic. And it's not difficult, but interesting topic. Um, what is it? I know the answer to the question, but I'm asking it anyway to give people the idea, right? So to make sure that how you live right now. What is your plan for the coming? What is your intent? What do you want to do?
Well, what I want to do, um, well, I'm gonna go like imagination without any limit is actually to create a community uh, with someone else because I would like to create a collective basically. 'Cause it's not my own vision. I There must be something that I'm not seeing or something that I don't know that will help create a more complete. And when I say complete, it's probably like kind of like a small prototype to see how the whole world can live in this together, live in this community together. And which is why I say as much diversity as possible. And diversity can gender, age, race, culture, religion, and different sectors, anything. Because I think well, my life, unfortunately, in this dimension, my life and time is limited. So, so I can only have certain experience, and it's really this lived experience where we understand um, how things can coexist in harmony. So there is a lot of conflict that I have within myself because of me having all these different interests, different live experience. I always saw it as a weakness, and now I kind of try to embrace it as a strength. And the more I share my experience of me, how I felt like I never belong, and now I realize there's other way of belonging. And someone told me the longing for belonging is actually the longing to be. And yeah, and I felt like I haven't found a community where I can just be, where I always need to modify myself to be. So when I start sharing my experience with people, I start seeing resonance. People saying, "Oh, I feel the same way," but without us sharing, how would we know? We always felt like we were alone. And my idea is really to bring these people together first and to see how do we create this? Like, I would like this I would say intentional community to be a prototype and where we do experiment how we can achieve this world. And then when we can once we well, it's not once we have to figure out, while we figure out, we can transmit what we learned from it. And I really would like to share this film or documentary film I recently saw called Village of Lovers. This is talking about a intentional community in Portugal, South Portugal, called Tamara. And there are many different aspects of this community, like environmental, social, but this particular documentary is talking about how they try to raise human consciousness in the way that they're experimenting in this community of love. How do you see love? Well, a big part of the film was talking about polyamory, but it's more than that. It's about how can we love everyone actually. And this is something that I also try to do when I was living in this community, is to see how I love everyone. And in a way, I don't know how to explain this, but I really feel this motherly love. I will call it motherly because I feel like mothers are the ones, the Mother Earth, loving everyone, providing for everyone. And that's how I was feeling when I sometimes reach that state where I feel like, oh, I really feel my love for everyone. That love is still different. I don't know how. But then this love is about like seeing people as how they are and appreciate how they are. Um, and so I felt like this documentary kind of like, um, yeah, it's showing how I actually part of my vision of the community is that I would like to have that. in mind, or for the world, of course. Yeah.
I will add the link to this documentary in the show notes. Uh, I was wondering to wrap this conversation up is if people want to join you in this journey or want to connect with you or are interested in this community that you have in mind that you are thinking about, you just painted the picture of that community. If they want to join you in that vision or work with you in a vision, how would they find that connect with you? What is your preference here?
Oh, any way possible. I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, email, WhatsApp, whatever works for them. I really love to hear from them. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's why I was opening this up because I feel that if this conversation could be interesting for when people listen to it by coincidence and think, "Oh, this is an interesting idea," but also for you when you talk about this idea, you could use snippets of this conversation and share it with people, and they could connect with you. And I think that's an interesting idea of it could be a great step for you to build this community. When you were talking about the love part, I think this is one of the last things I want to share is. I was recommended this great book because you talk about the mother, right? So you talk about
Mhm.
feminine kind of qualities, and I was talking about something, and she said, "Well, I believe an interesting book about it is called Love and Power."
Ah,
I'll put the link in the show notes as well. There are
mhm.
more books titled like that, but there's one type I forgot who the author is. It's Love and Power, but I put it in the show notes, and with where it's about the balance between love and power, right? And I think it's an interesting um, topic to have a conversation about, right? And when you just have love, it will also be very messy. It will also create a lot of issues and problems. When you just talk about power, same thing, different problems, but same thing. So it's about the balance or the active balance between the love and power, which is important if you want to have like a good community or good relationship with yourself, with others. I think I haven't. I have started reading the book. I'm not done with it, but what I understand from it now, it's both when you focus on either of them too much, it becomes difficult. It gives you a lot of mess. When you bring them together, there's so much things that can come from this. So that's why I wanted to mention this because you mentioned this mother idea, which I love and I agree, but also
Mhm.
power and love.
Yeah. But I think there is a lot of power behind this love,
Yes,
actually.
yes.
And yeah, thank you for sharing. It's beautiful. And that makes me think of how, well, we're living in duality. So we put everything into duality, but eventually what we're finding is the place of wholeness where you have all this divine dichotomy that it coexists. They're just one thing, actually. There is no love and power. There's love and power. There's good and bad. It's like we need to accept all that in us as well to start with.
Veronica, thank you very much for sharing your ideas and vision where you want to go and how you want to do this. And I love the cooperation that we have at the moment. I love learning from you, and I think that's like what I see in the power that you described of the community is learning yourself, learning about yourself, finding your own way in relationship to others. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Arno. Thank you for creating this space and time. It's really a pleasure to be here. Um, yeah, and thanks for creating this platform for me to share my voice.